The previous basket is under review.
Welcome back to Stats by Will and Jim, a podcast powered by the Basket Under Review Network. Our leader, Trilly Donovan, has got this independent college basketball website set up, and we are one of the two flagship podcasts of the network, joined by the Basket Under Review podcast with Eamon Brennan. If you haven't listened this week, go check that out with Kevin Sweeney. But I am the titular Jim of Stats by Will and Jim Root, and I'm joined by the also titular Will Warren, here to discuss yet another interesting list in the college basketball world, a topic that we're going to hopefully really zero in on stats as we continue to go through the season. But Will, in the offseason last week, we talked about 10 teams we think we're most likely to make the tournament that missed in 2025. Now we're flipping the premise, getting negative. Who's going to miss the big dance that made it in 2025? Are you ready to quash some dreams?
This is the Silky Johnson Player Hater of the Year ball that we're doing. This is all hate all the time. No, I mean there's some of these teams that I'm looking at on my list that I genuinely like. Like I can see the upside for, I can see the reasoning. But your stat last week, I believe, was 13 teams on average that are at larges. It's kind of like the NFL's 4 teams in, 4 teams out thing. Almost, well, not half, but about a third of the at larges trade out every year. And so you might think, well, it's mostly, 9s, 10s, 11s or whatever. But as we'll get to, there's some higher seeds generally that will miss out. So yeah, it's an interesting topic. I'm sure everybody will handle it very maturely and very respectfully.
Yes, I think there's maybe 2 or 3 fan bases that'll enter this like, yep, we knew this was coming for us. We're okay with it. And then 7 or 8 others that are not going to be happy to see their name or hear their name on this list. But we'll get to it, and we'll hopefully at least make a good case why. That's our goal here, to at least present our stance.
Yeah, so if you have complaints, please direct them to Andy Katz Sideline on Twitter. You can DM him. He'll handle our media inquiries for a little bit.
Yes, yeah, that's perfect. He's our social media guy. So yeah, thank you, Will, for clarifying. Hopefully there's a monsoon of DMs coming his way, and it will confuse him. All right, yes. So before we get into the meat of the podcast, we've got a couple bits of housekeeping to take care of. First, a shout out to our presenting sponsors, Home Field. They just launched their brick and mortar location in Bloomington, Indiana. Good to see their CEO Connor there cutting the ribbon. A really cool event for them. The first actual location of the best college apparel company you'll find in these great United States. We've got a promo code here, Burner15, for 15% off your first purchase. Encourage you to use that as we get into football season here. I know week 0 is approaching. My Missouri Tigers play on Thursday before week 1, so I got to get some gear ready for that. It is the perfect time to invest in some home field apparel. Homefieldapparel.com. That promo code is Burner15. Thank you to Home Field for the sponsorship. And folks, get yourself some gear. I'm wearing a shirt right now, so I can attest to you that it is comfortable. All right, Will, we also have to get the stat of the day out of the way here because we are stats and we like to have a little bit of a stat mention here. The question I have for you today is, can you name the 2 players in college basketball last year that were 6'9" or taller to rank in the top 100 of assist rate? This is per KenPom. There are 2 of them. They are both, to indicate the way you should be thinking, they're both more guards. This is not point centers. There's no Ali Khalifa among the bunch here. And they're both in the Mountain Time Zone. That's the hint I will give you. Both of the, one is Power 5, one is the Mid-Major Plus variety. And I've got more hints if you don't have guesses yet.
You're going to have to, because my first guess was going to be Oscar Clough. I thought that was going to be the pick because he had a gargantuan assist rate last year.
One was an NBA draft pick. I can't remember if he went lottery or not.
Ooh, 6'9" or taller NBA draft pick.
And then these guys really more like operated as point guards, ran ball screens, etc. He was a highly regarded foreign recruit.
Okay. Let me think on this for a second.
Okay.
Okay, Igor Demin.
Correct. That is number 1. The
I need
second
another
one,
hint for the second because that's my power 5. Now it's going to get fun.
yep, yeah, this one is not. It's still a higher level. It's not true mid major. The capital of this player's school state is Carson City.
Okay, so it's Nevada. Is it? Shit. It's not Nick Davidson,
It is the point
right?
guard of his team. It is Kobe
Okay.
Sanders.
Kobe Sanders is that tall?
Yeah, I think he's more like 6'7". He might have had the ceremonial goosing of his height when he transferred to Nevada. But yeah, that was the system. They had Keenan Blackshear, the bigger point guard there before.
This is great inflation. This is some.
At its finest,
This is
right?
great inflation. You want to know what his freshman year height is on Torvik?
6'6".
6'6".
Okay.
You want to know what his junior year height on Torvik is? 6'6".
Yeah, he got bigger apparently, or falsely. We joked about it with Gabe Dines multiple times when we talk USC. I also tweeted this week about Scotty Middleton, who I'm worried about, who was listed at
Yeah, he's shrinking.
6'7", 190 as a freshman at Ohio State, and this year at Tulane he's listed as 6'6", 165. Just on a
We
crash
finally
diet.
have the Benjamin Button basketball player.
Exactly, he's shrinking. It's alarming, but I think he's going to succeed at Tulane. I'm just worried about what his diet is and whether that 190 was the fakest waitlisting of all time at Ohio State.
Well, luckily he's in a city devoid of good restaurants, obviously. So
yeah, there's not a
he
single
any weight.
jambalaya to be found in New Orleans. So we'll see how that turns out. But okay, some quick numbers on our topic here. Well, you alluded to it with these teams that go in and out of the tournament, the at-large bids that turn over. It was a lower number of at-large bids turning over last year. Only 11 teams that were true at-large that I counted. It's tricky because the 2024 tournament had so many bid stealers that there were less like fringe cases, and I think that lowered it. But 2024 and 2023 had 16 and 17, like a ton of teams turn over. Of the combined all 3 years, only had 12 that were coaching changes. So you've got some retirements with Tony Bennett, Jay Wright, Bob Huggins. You can call it retirement or forced out, whatever you want. And then you've got guys like Dusty May, Kyle Smith, Micah Shrewsbury, Todd Golden that jumped to a new job, and the place that they were able to build up, San Francisco, Washington State, FAU, ends up falling out of the tournament. So there's patterns, I guess, we would hope to find at this, but we'll see if those are what we landed on with our 10 teams here. Last year, well, the highest seeded team to not make it from 2024 was South Carolina, a 6 seed.
Mm-hmm.
And the 2 previous years, both of them had 3 teams seeded number 3 or higher to miss. So like a 2 seed, a 3 seed just quickly fell out the following season. Now one of those is Jay Wright retiring, and hey, shout out Kyle Neptune. Happy to get a haymaker thrown in early. But yes, there can be really good teams that quickly tumble out. And so we'll have to try to challenge ourselves at the end or see if there's any teams that really jump out in that range for us. But all right, that's enough setup, table setting here. Well, let's get into the teams. Who do you have as your number one most likely to miss the tournament that made it last year?
So this is a fringe case because they were a 10 seed. And so this is an easy one to point out and be like, well, of course they're going to miss. They were close anyway. But they did not require the conference auto bid. They did have a coaching change. They do not return a single minute. It is New Mexico. And it bums me out because I love New Mexico. The Pit is such a sick arena. I've really got to get out there one day. It just seems like a great time, especially for marquee home games. But honestly, I love the hire. Like Eric Olin, I think I had him top 3, along with Ben McCollum and somebody. Oh, and Will Wade. He was 3rd on my list of coaching ranking hires for this offseason. But it's going to be a real uphill battle in year 1, even as much as we like him. The guards are solid rocks to build on. I like Albury and Chris Howell. But I've got your ongoing roster sheet pulled up here, and I'm going to read you 4 numbers. And I want you to guess what these numbers represent. 0.9, 1.8, 0.6, 1.0.
All right, I don't have it pulled up. Well, I have it open, but I'm not looking at it directly. Are those the 3-point attempts per game of their starters or something like that? Okay.
That's for the starters. Now, there is a JUCO transfer previously at Rutgers who I believe did take a couple. but at least at the D1 level, this is a very unproven shooting roster, which is problematic to me. Especially in a Mountain West that generally has pretty solid shooting across the board. Now, Olin has made, hay out of some relatively under-talented rosters, but I think that this might be a year away, even maybe 2 years away. The big man room is not something I'm into. JT Rock being your best big man is questionable at best. And we've kind of just seen this before, especially in what's generally, we'd say, a top 7 league, maybe top 6. I know they're not Power 5, but they're at least they're mid-major plus, I guess we'd go with. Uh, the X and O and analytical savvy can only do so much for a brand new roster with limited athletic upside.
Yeah, and then you mentioned the shooting. I think it's really important to note Olin's team that really took off last year ranked 6th nationally in three-point attempt rate. Like that was a big part of his arsenal. The first team up in Division 1 ranked 6th also. Last year was 8th. The first team was 6th, 23rd the second year. Like he really leans into spacing, having the threat of shooting, and just not positive this roster is going to have it with the big men. I know Arman Jovic in the Discord today was kind of beating the drum for Tomislav Buljan, whether he can be a contributing piece, a big guy in the front court, but there are a lot of question marks. It is not the same kind of, hey, we returned Donovan Dent and Nelly Jr. Joseph, and Richard Pitino has got it rolling here at the Pit. I'm with you. I love the hire. I think I even mentioned him quickly on our jump seat episode, but it just doesn't look like he's going to have the horses to have that like quick double bounce up to a second job and have the big year. So I had the number 2. I thought it was kind of a 2-horse race, a top for the most likely to miss from last year. Very much with you on the Lobos, unfortunately, but I do think bright days are ahead with Olin in charge, and just as he continually gets that roster up to speed to Mountain West talent-wise. He's got some rookies, or not rookies, recruits that are following from UC San Diego, and Big West recruits headed to the Mountain West. We'll see how it plays out. Okay, let's see if you nailed the other team I thought was a part of the 2-horse race here, Will. Who else did you have up at the top of your list?
My number 2 might be your number 1. We'll find out. It was Memphis.
Okay. I had them 3.
Oh, okay. Right. Interesting. I've got a feel of your number 1, but now I'm not so sure. I'll give my Memphis case really quick, then we'll go to your number 1. I've got a couple key reasons that I'm not particularly rosy on this edition. Rambunctiousness being one I have listed. I just feel like this is I know, look, all love and respect to children. My sister-in-law just had one. But I do feel like watching Memphis is attuned to like watching a 5-year-old like go, mom, look at me do this, and they just like wiggle their arms around. That's kind of the feel of watching Memphis basketball sometimes. Just like, what are you guys trying? Like, what is the purpose here? And then they win anyway, which makes it worse. But the regression aspect of this is the key for me, really. So 11-1 in games decided by 6 or less last year. Astonishing number here. One that I don't think I've seen really before. 19-3 in games within 5 in the final 5 minutes per CBB Analytics. 19-3.
That's absurd.
That's insane. So the 4 teams, and this is just 1 year. I didn't have time to run it deeper, but I would wager it's pretty similar. The 4 teams with the best close game win percentage in 23-24 combined to barely finish above 500 in these same games the next year, 19-17. So I won't be shocked if they finish mid-50s in KenPom again. I don't like the roster as much as I did last year, but it wouldn't be that outlandish for them to overperform by a little bit. But even like a 5-game regression in wins could give them a resume similar to that of like a Boise State or a San Francisco last year. And those teams were not really that close to making the tournament. They're like, I guess they would say next 4 out or something like that. So they kind of feel like a next 4 out team. And it's also just another roster with a truly 100% turnover, not a minute back. I know Ashton Hardaway is like kind of returning, but that doesn't count. He was on St. Mary's. And the personalities involved are just so chaotic. The path to this, like, going really poorly, and to me that means like 19-12, 18-13 or something like that. That can happen. It's happened before with a Memphis team. So yeah, I don't think they'll be a 5 seed certainly, and I don't feel great about them getting in.
Yep, I'm very much with you. And penny teams have always had trouble blowing bad opponents out. But man, the close game stuff last year, and it helps to have a guy like PJ Haggerty who can score on any possession, draw foul. Like I think that was very important for their late game success. I don't know if Doug McDaniel is going to provide that same kind of stability. I definitely don't think he's going to provide that same kind of stability leadership wise and in terms of decision making. So that's a little bit erratic. Aaron Bradshaw is not viewed anywhere near what, like, I think people kind of saw the Dane Danger revolution coming there, just how
Hmm.
productive he was. Bradshaw, people are just really, cool on his basketball IQ, and he's not the kind of like true incredible shot blocker you want out of a 7-footer, former 5-star recruit. And yeah, the Sincere Parker thing, I don't even know. I haven't written my Memphis preview for Basket Under Review because I don't know what's happening there. He's got some off the court allegations, we'll just say, that need to be cleared up. And I think it's probably not even certain that he's going to be playing for the team this year. That's got to get all sorted out. And he's a big time scoring talent that they probably need. Other than that, it's a lot of kind of hope and prayer, down transfers or mid-major guys that I'm not positive will translate. It doesn't feel like they have the same talent level as Haggerty, Tyrese Hunter, Dane Danger. Last year was a much better team. I don't think Penny's an elevator. I think he's an acquirer of talent, not an elevator of talent.
Yeah, and this is another offseason with some assistant changes and weird stuff happening with that too. So yeah, and I did go and look it up really quick. They shot 44% from three in those games within 5 in the final 5 minutes. So that's really hard to repeat a second time, no matter what talent you have.
Yep. As much as every fan base, when they win close games, it's like, well, it's because our coach is good and we have the right strategy. I think over most sample sizes and most coaches, that's going to be a little closer to even than 19-3. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I did want to mention Memphis 73rd in Bart Torvik, New Mexico 90th. So definitely two teams that are outside of that statistical projection on the outside looking in. Somebody else that is up in that range that maybe I shouldn't have had one looking back on it just because of their conference, but I had Xavier number one. And you talk about
them number 3. So
yeah, a similar top 3 on both ends here. And it's a fringe case. They were a first 4 team last year. So, you were talking about New Mexico being a 10 seed. This team barely made it. They had the coaching change kind of offsetting the New Mexico coaching change. They bring Richard Pitino over. It's just a major roster reset. I'm not positive who the high-level Big East players are. They've got a lot of bites at the apple. I kind of like Trey Carroll. I kind of like Gabriel Posado. I kind of like a couple of the wings, but I think the point guard position is a problem. We'll see if Anthony Robinson can kind of catch up to the speed up to the of the game at center. And it just feels like let's see what we have year. A lot of transfers with multiple years still to play. That seems to be more what Richard Pitino's goal is. Let's get a foundation than it is. We need to get right back to the tournament. I think he's got a longer leash. So I don't think they're expecting to make the tournament as a fan base or as a coaching staff. And that's okay. I'm okay with that.
yeah, no offense to our sizable Xavier contingent, obviously. And to be honest, I kind of like the transfer class. It does make sense. There's some potential multi-year guys here too, which is always good to build on. Like you said, I think this is more of a foundational year than a, let's shock the world year. But I don't love the shooting options. The Patino teams in general, if I have a complaint about even his very best teams, they can really get bogged down into some nasty mid-range twos. A lot of contested shots the New Mexico guards took the last couple of years, and they hit them at times. But you can just get like the flashbacks, like Jamal Mashburn Jr. taking like 15 shots he didn't need to in a game. And I could see Messina Moore and Wright both doing that. Like, I think those guys need to be, just to set a number here, at like 38% or better from 3, probably the whole way. Because outside of that, I'm not really sure where the plus shooting comes from. And the front court defense is a little wobbly to me. I'm not totally sold on that. Now, Richard the Younger is a much better coach than he gets credit for. I think we should state that. But roster-wise, this kind of feels like a year too early.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the roster that gets me with it. And you mentioned the mid-rangers, and like he's had such good guards with even if you want to detract some of what Mashburn brings, he's better than Roddy Anderson or All Right as a shot creator. And then Donovan Dent, Jalen House, those guys were outstanding relative to what they have here. I mean, he had better guards in the Mountain West than he does in the Big East. That is concerning to me. And as you mentioned, New Mexico barely got in last year, and I think this is a worse roster than what he had down in Albuquerque. So, yep, I'm with you. Xavier, that is our top three. Now it starts to get maybe interesting. We'll see. Let's go with your number 4, Will. Who do you have 4th as the team that made it in 2025 that will not make it in 2026?
So I think from here on out, unless I'm wrong, always possible, all 7 of these are in the 3-man weave top 50. But I
Oh,
also think all 7 of these have been revealed already anyway, so they're, like, by nature, fringe cases. Well, okay, I'm not gonna spoil it. There is one that I think might be an honorable mention, but F it. My number 4 starts with, boy, I don't know, is, Oklahoma.
okay.
This is a great backcourt with a very thin front court and no obvious 3-and-D guy, the back two of which I'm always looking for in my preferred Porter Moser squads. Those are the best ones at Loyola. Oklahoma last year had that. Honestly, some of the better Oklahoma teams of his early tenure that didn't make it just by way of close game variance or playing in a hellish conference, both had that. Like, I thought they were a little lighter on the guard play and better in the front court or on the wings. The upside here is basically all in the hands of Xavier Brown and Nigel Pack, which scares me. Pack can obviously shoot the daylights out of it, but um, can I just say he's bad defensively?
Yeah,
Like,
I will allow that.
yeah, I think he's bad defensively. Brown is a lot better on that end. I respect Xavier Brown on defense, but the my turn, your turn thing at guard always kind of seems to me to be a little like 2 quarterback systems where it's like it's better in theory than it comes out. And like it can work and it will. It's going to work at times this year, but when it doesn't work, I think you're going to feel like, I don't know, you ever go to a movie and it's like supposedly an hour and 47 minutes or whatever, but you're checking your watch 40 minutes in, you're like, how are we not an hour in?
Yes, I
I
know the
kind of
exact
feel like
feeling.
Oklahoma's going to feel that way sometimes this year. We're like, man, this possession's lasting a lot longer than it should. And like Moser, his teams sort of by nature run longer possessions to begin with. So I'm worried about that. I'm worried about the defensive physicality. I'm worried about rebounding big time. Who is rebounding on this roster outside of Big Mo? So that, like, to me, this feels like a team that honestly would make the tournament if they played in, like, funny enough, if they played in the Big 12, I think they might make the tournament. But I think that this is going to be in a grouping of teams we're going to discuss where, by nature of probably being in the best conference in the nation, they're primed to go like 17 and 14, 16 and 15, and just like not have enough wins go to the dance. And also, they had some real positive 3-point percentage luck last year, especially in big games that gave them the wins they needed to make the tournament. Getting that a second time is easier said than done.
Yeah, they were already a bad rebounding team with Godwin, and now he's gone, and they didn't really backfill a lot of the size in the paint. This is the team I'm kind of higher on or buying because of I like the guard combo. I think Darian Reed has some real breakout potential now that he's healthy after kind of a banged up season at Alabama as a former highly rated recruit. But I think there's a good point there with the 2 guards where if you're going to play those 2 together, you want at least one to be like truly pass first. And I think Pack and Brown are both better as scorers. And that does lead to some my turn, your turn back and forth. They've got injury concerns. Like Jaden Jones, Jeff Nwankwo both missed all of last season, and they're probably going to be top 7 guys on this roster. So there's real red flags. And you just also got the same typical Porter Moser trajectory of the year. Like, all right, be good in the non-conference. And he has yet to finish 500 in the SEC. His best SEC season is 8-10, and that was in probably worse SECs. So is the roster good enough to climb that mountain and make the tournament as a 7-11 team? You have to be amazing and lucky in the non-con like they were last year. And yeah, it's going to be tricky. And I'm going to skip to my number 5. I'll skip over 4 because I think it's a good partner with Oklahoma. I have Georgia right there. Another
I have them
team.
number 5 too.
Okay, perfect. Just a lot of the arguments that we made about the situation of Oklahoma apply as well to Georgia. They're in this really tough SEC that's probably not going to get 14 teams. It won't. It won't get 14 teams again. So who's going to be the ones that fall out? Perhaps Oklahoma, perhaps Georgia. I thought Silas Demery and Asa Newell were their clear two best players, like really elevated them. Newell, obviously an NBA draft pick. Demery headhunted by UConn to lead their system on offense. So replacing those two could be tough. They really need Cannon Catchings to be better than he's been in his career. Basically got buried at BYU. That concerns me. I think the front court will still be solid. They've got bodies with Dylan James. I think Cyril will have a really big breakout now that he's got a path to clearer minutes. But I don't love Jordan Ross, who wasn't that great in the WCC, just can't shoot. There's just too many questions here to look at a Mike White roster and think this team's going to be just as good as last year, even though they are 33rd at Bart Torvik and Oklahoma 31st. I'm just not buying it, Will. This is the team I'm selling.
Well, and I think in general, I always come away wanting more from a Mike White basketball team. I don't ever feel very satisfied watching them, and sometimes that's my own fault for not liking defense first squads as much as I should. But last year, watching Georgia, like, yeah, they made the tournament. That's great. And, I really don't hold it against them that they got blown out by Gonzaga. That was a brutal matchup. No harm, no foul for me. I wouldn't say that that's a demerit against them or whatever. But I kept waiting the entire year for somebody to stop turning the ball over or shoot threes well, and it just never seemed to happen. And it felt like if they could have just remedied that, they would have been a 5 seed or something. They always feel like less than the sum of their parts somehow, which frustrates me. And yeah, the weird thing here is I actually really like some of the 3-point options they have this year in Justin Bailey, Marcus Melinder from UTSA, even Jeremiah Wilkinson. I don't think gets enough credit as a shooter. He's not amazing, but I think he took a lot of difficult shots in an offense where he was asked to do a lot, and the spacing theoretically should be a little better here. But yeah, like you said, I think your mileage varies depending on how you feel about Jordan Ross or Blue Kane, who I've never been a huge fan of. Cannon Catching, same thing. I don't know. There's aspects of this that make depth, or aspects of this that make sense, but the wings don't feel SEC caliber to me, at least starter wise. Cannon Catchings, like you said, sort of got lost in the shuffle a bit at BYU. It felt like he was less important as they got better, frankly. Kane, I'm not huge on. I think they really suffer because I'm looking at your roster now, and outside of Blue Kane, they don't have a single player between 6'4" and 6'8", which is problematic for 3-and-D guys and/or wing defense. The bigs are also really scary if Somto Cyril can't stay out of foul trouble. Because I want you to name your second favorite Georgia big on this roster.
Well, it's probably Dylan James, or just I liked Abson at Appalachian State 2 years ago. He anchored a really good mid-major defense, but he got buried last year, and I'm surprised he returned, quite honestly. It seemed like a guy that should have gone elsewhere and gotten more featured role.
Honestly.
Yeah, would have been great. I'm sure Dustin Kearns would have picked up the phone immediately. But yeah, that it doesn't have the same feel as last year. They were rotating through 5 or 6 guys in the paint. Awesome offensive rebounding team, top 25 in free throw rate. They're not going to have the same physical identity, playing catchings at the 4 a lot. And I don't know that I've ever trusted a Mike White space team. And I'm thinking back to some of the Andrew Nembhard, Kerry Blackshear Florida teams that you said left me wanting more offensively, especially. So if you don't have great guard defenders, don't have many wings, where's the defense being built out of? I guess Cyril, but he's foul prone. I just don't see it. I would be shocked if they finished at or better than where they're currently ranked in Bart Torvik.
Well, that, and maybe others feel differently, but watching them throughout last year and even looking through the stats, it really felt like Asa Newell fixed a lot of problems for them that he's not around to fix this year.
Yep.
I mean, you would say this. I mean, second best offensive player is Demery, who's gone, and then I guess beyond that, you would point to Blue Kane.
who was at sub 35 from three. It wasn't like
Yeah,
a
who's like
lights out.
he's fine. I think he's a solid SEC player, but that's your best returning scorer. I don't know. It just doesn't make a lot of sense.
I'll give a quick counterpoint that surprised me for Georgia fans, because I'm totally in agreement with you with the way what my eyes saw with Newell.
Mhm.
Apparently, they were 14 points worse per 100 possessions with him on the court per CVB analytics. That really surprises me. 958 minutes, and
Huh.
they were negative 13.8 net rating. That shocked me, but I still kind of stand by that. Not every number is Bible, and they will suffer without his shot blocking, his length, his mobility in the front court. I think that'll be an issue for them. So I'll be selling Georgia stock. We'll see if I go broke with that financial move, but that is where I'm landing. Okay, I will pitch you my number 4, and we'll see if you had them on your list. They are also kind of further down in Bartorvik right now. They were a fringe case last year, got a 10 seed. Utah State, a team that I do like. Mason Falslev back. I ranked him, I think, a top 55 player in the entire country in our top 100 rankings. Jared Calhoun's a really good coach who's been savvy with the portal for years and years, dating back to Youngstown State. But I don't think the talent level's super high this year, even with some savvy portal work and beyond Falslev. And teams really figured out their zone down the stretch last year. I think that was a really good wrinkle, but it was also sort of out of necessity of not being able to truly defend great in man-to-man. Whether this year's personnel is fixed to the point where Calhoun can go back to more of a man-to-man base, I'm not so sure of. But it felt like down the stretch last year as the schedule stiffened up, they lost, I think, 5 of their last 7 against NCAA tournament caliber Mountain West teams. And I think that was indicative of teams sort of solving them and having good tape on the zone. And I'm just not sure there's enough beyond Falslev and beyond a couple other solid pieces. I like Gary Clark from Corpus Christi. But this one that was close to the cut line, Mountain West may not get as many bids next year. Utah State will. What are your thoughts on the Aggies?
So I actually didn't have them on my list. They were in the honorable mentions.
Okay.
But I can understand where you're coming from. The talent level's a bit lower this year. They were very lucky in close games last year too. I think 9-2 in games decided by 6 or less. I have to fact check that. But yeah, I feel that this is a good roster, but you don't really want to be going into this with that large ideas with a good roster in a non P5 league. So I think there's something to it where, like, honestly, Colby King I like a lot. I think he could really benefit from better spacing and better offensive structure in general. Like you said, Gary Clark is awesome. Tucker Anderson I've liked for a while, and I think he could benefit from an expanded role. But again, who is stopping the ball exactly? Who is going to really, because Jared Calhoun, as much as I like him, has never really had a good defense. So I think that could be problematic. I could see them having worse luck in close games this year. It comes for everyone eventually. It's, no offense to them. But yeah, honestly, looking at them, I probably should have had them on my list somewhere. I got lost in the sauce with the P5, so I was ready to be a hater. But I will say this. I think that they will be fine if Drake Allen can just shoot better. Like, I know 28.8% last year is obviously quite bad, but if you can just get that to, like, I don't know, 33, 34, teams will respect you more. They'll sag off of you less. It will make things open up a lot better because the other 4 guys in the projected starting lineup are all pretty good shooters. So if you can add a 5th, that's at least okay. That makes it that much harder to guard.
And I think they're well coached in terms of player development. Like Dexter Akano went from 33% from deep to 43 in a year over year. Mason Falslev went from 30% to 38%. Like there are guys that can get better, or guys have gotten better in that system. So if Drake Allen does give them a little more of that perimeter pop on the ball, he's a great driver, great passer. So they've got options. Anderson might be one of the types of guys that forces them into the zone defense because I don't think of him as a real stout individual on that end. And they do lose their 7-footer, Aubin Gadaretsi, who was a 76% from the field. Not an elite shot blocker, but I think in the back line of that zone, he made a difference. Can Clark provide a facsimile of that as a much smaller human, 6'7", 6'8". I think he was listed at 6'7" at Corpus Christi, and he's 6'8" now at Utah State. So it's a little bit smaller of a front line. Maybe Zach Keller from Utah, a deep big man rotation there can give them a little more, but just a team that kind of probability wise, based on how far down KenPom they were last year and how far down the seed list, I just could not put them on my list. I had to include the Aggies. Sorry, Utah State. All right,
Another great home arena.
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone in that state, BYU, Utah, a lot of good ones in the Mountain West, just rabid crowds that are going to make you hear them.
Yeah, we got to give a shout out. Kyle Mann, who I guess we'll find out if he listens to the show or not, from The Ringer. Amazing video on Utah hoops, like the culture of basketball in Utah. I think it's The Ringer NBA is the channel on YouTube. Whatever it is, just Google Kyle Mann Utah and you'll find it. One of my favorite videos of the year.
I haven't even watched it, so I'm going to do that after the show. Okay, have we gotten all of your top 5 out of the way, Will, or no?
Yes,
we have. Okay, let's anger some Power 5 fan bases, because I believe that is all. That's all I have left in my listing. I did not count VCU because they made it with a with an automatic bid, and I think they probably wouldn't have made it had they not gotten that. So I didn't count them as a team that could fall out. Who is your number 6, Will? Let's do this.
This one is just frankly betting on something I've bet on since the hire was announced. Texas A&M. I'm just not convinced this style can work in the SEC. I would like for it to, because it's fun. I mean, if the scheme and the chaos and the offense and like transition play all work the way of the boosters of like Buckyball think it should, if we're just going off of roster, this is probably one of the 25 most talented in the sport. Like very old, very proven at the college level. If opponents crack the press and exploit really poor rim protection and just interior play in general, this is not a top 60 team in the sport. And I don't know which of these is more realistic. So I think that could be the beauty and the misery of this year. But I ended up putting them on this list because I just can't get behind the big defense at all. Federico 2 times just does not fit Buckyball at all. He's a great not great, but a good drop defender. He made sense for Texas Tech last year in their scheme. I liked him at Pitt as well. He's not an up and down, run and gun guy. The stamina is not quite as high as you would hope either. The problem is he's the only guy in this roster that can block a shot at the 5. The best defensive lineup and the best offensive one are so vastly different that I kind of think this is more of a chaos team. Like they'll pull off a bigger upset or two. Like I don't have their schedule in front of me, but if we see them beat Florida or Auburn or whoever, that's not surprising. If they lose by 36 to a top 15 team in conference play, that's not surprising. Honestly, just coaching wise and like what I've been thinking about, Tennessee in particular feels like a really bad matchup for this style. I could see Arkansas being a really bad one for it too. So I have a hard time betting on a team with such obvious flaws, I guess.
Yeah, I like the talent too, the roster. I think especially with when he got the job, figuring it out and putting together this much actual SEC caliber talent is really impressive. They are a top 40 team at Bart Torvik, but I do have them number 9 on my list, Will, and it's same as you. I want to see what kind of decisions Bucky makes with style. It's not an apples to apples or identical comparison, but like Brad Underwood had to change when he got to power conference basketball. Stephen F. Austin was one of the most maniacally pressing teams in the country when he was there. Tried to take it to Oklahoma State, and they were horrible defensively for the first 2 months. They played more conservatively, snuck into the tournament as a 10 seed. Then he tried to pressure again at Illinois. First 2 seasons were under 500 overall, outside the top 80 in KenPom. There was a learning curve for that extreme of a style. Now they play the heaviest drop coverage in the entire country. I don't know if Bucky's going to quickly transition to that, or if he's going to maybe try to see what Buckyball does at this level. He's won with it at every level. He won a bunch of state titles in Alabama with it. I just think high major athleticism and ball control, decision-making is going to be a little bit more of a challenge when you're facing it night to night to night in the SEC. So if he's going to pull the reins back, I could see it, but it's such a high risk team. I thought including them in the top 10 here was logical. So I'm with you. I share your stance on the Aggies. That not to spoil any potential future episodes or articles, but they would rank highly in your watchability ranks, correct?
Oh, of course. Like that's the thing. Going from watching Texas A&M in the Wade Taylor years, and no disrespect to Wade Taylor, fun player, to going to watching what we'll just call the upside version of Texas A&M in the Bucky year, has to be not dissimilar to like breaking out of jail after 25 years, like a Shawshank Redemption feel. And do I think that this team will be good as any of the last 3 or 4 A&M teams? Definitely not, as evidenced by my stances. But do I think they'll be infinitely more watchable? Like, yeah, I don't think they're going to play toilet ball, so to say.
Yes. Yeah. Buzzball is gone. Fun transition here because my number 6 is Buzzball, Maryland.
Oh,
So I kind of wanted to set that up. I'm glad you put it on a tee for me. Maryland is the kind of answer to the Texas A&M coaching change. This is where Buzz Williams went to. They're 41st at Bart Torvik. It's a roster you can say, okay, conceivably can play a similar way. Like, can Miles Rice be a high volume chucker like Wade Taylor? Sure. Do they have a deep enough front court with Payne, with Washington to potentially be incredible offensively on the glass? Saunders is in that mix too. Perhaps it just doesn't feel like the same kind of depth, athleticism, kind of juggernaut that they had with Texas A&M, especially this last season with Buzz when they got up into the upper echelon of seeding. I could see this one in the Big Ten, a slightly more physical, half court based league, not working out as well. I had a couple half-hearted puns of the last time we had a Payne and a Washington in the nation near the nation's capital. It was great for the USA. Give me rebounds or give me death. I'm just throwing them out there one by one at a time here. But I think there's a little bit of downside with Maryland with the guard play, with the lack of shooting. There's a little bit here, maybe even more than he had at Texas A&M, but it's not quite as physically imposing. And I could see Big Ten teams being able to measure up to it.
I had them 9th. This feels like a half and half bet where half of what's going on here makes sense because it's Buzzball. Like getting Payne in there, getting Washington in there. Even a couple of the other guys like Elijah Saunders, I think makes sense for this team. A little more shooty than your average Buzzball 4, but it works. And I have always been a fan of Miles Rice. I know he wasn't amazing in Indiana last year, but I'm willing to chalk that up to perhaps playing in what we'll say is a suboptimal offensive system.
Oh, you're kind. You're kind. Suboptimal.
I'm unaware of what we can and can't say on the fake radio here.
Fair.
But Darius Adams, big swing piece for me. And really, the other half of it is that it just feels like they're trying to mesh 2 completely different things. Where, okay, you got Isaiah Watts. You've got him as like your connector piece. How does this work with the rest of the roster? Like, are Rice and Payne going to run pick and roll and you just like hope Payne is better off the roll than he usually is? Like, to me, their best path to wins, strangely, is just uglying it up and pounding it into Pharrell Payne over and over and over and just leaning on the physicality aspect. And, whenever Rice and Watts, because there's no, I guess, like David Coit, you'd like kind of qualify as a plus 3-point shooter somewhat. I'm not a huge believer, but he's good. Like, he's a good shooter.
Yep.
You would have Solomon Washington in there for rebounding, I guess. And I don't know. This is a roster with like pieces I like that just doesn't connect for me, no matter how many times I've tried to figure it out. Now, Buzz is an expert at winning ugly. So if they get to March and they're like somehow in there as a 9 seed, I'm not going to be shocked. But if we get to March and this team is just like, you spend all of conference championship week praying for no mid-major or like bid thief upsets so that like this team doesn't get in because they're that tough to watch. It could kind of be like the 23-24 Virginia of this season.
Yeah, it's in the past we always said, especially like the last 2 years, these buzz teams were get off the bus type of squads. Like you're just like, whoa, are they a football team
Mhm.
or a basketball team? And as you said, they're a little of two minds this year. It's like you tried to fix some of the shooting ailments, but then you sacrifice what you're actually good at, and then you kind of end up half decent at both and not good enough at either. I don't think they'll be the number one offensive rebounding team in the country again. Anderson Garcia, aka mid major or college Dennis Rodman, is no longer in the picture. They'll be up there, definitely up there, but not number one. And then defensively, they were top 10 last year. It was easily Buzz's best defense at Texas A&M. I don't think they have the same kind of paint intimidation, and they had some decent shooting luck with the amount of threes they give up because they're very condensed defensively. They switch a lot. They play a little bit of zone too, and teams that can deal with that will give them a lot of trouble. So yeah, Maryland, not my favorite squad, but I have them like in the top 48. So they're right around, like they'll be bubbly, but I think they're still one of the more likely teams.
The wins above bubble, like bubble spot, is usually 45th in the rankings, and I feel like Maryland is going to be 45th the entire season.
Just floating on it, 1 foot in the tournament, 1 foot out.
You're gonna see them first four out, or like in the actual first four every single night. Lenardi updates the bracket.
Yep, that sounds right to me. We'll start them there to start the season and see if they ever get outside of that little spectrum.
Eamon Brennan is going to be so sick of writing about Maryland.
Yes, he is. Yes, he is. Okay, so we've each got 3 more on the list. We each flopped our 6s and our 9s. That was kind of an interesting anomaly. Who do you have at number 7, Will?
Controversial pick here, I think. But this was the team I couldn't remember if they're in your top 50 or not. It's Clemson.
My number 7 as well. Yep.
Okay. This just feels like a gap year team. And that's nothing bad. But the thing I've noticed over the years, and you may have noticed too, Brownell's teams usually fare better the longer the players get to be in the program because it's a complicated offense. There's a lot of off ball motion, and it takes a while to get comfortable with it. It's kind of like how instituting the spread used to be in college football, where it would take you like a year and a half to really, download all of that info in. It just doesn't make me feel rosy for a team replacing 89% of their minutes. Because the actual roster construction does generally make sense stylistically for what Brownell wants to do. I just really wish there was one proven great shooter to help space things out offensively, because I think that's going to be what ends up holding them back. And like, I love Nick Davidson. I'm glad that he's going to get his moment in the sun this year. Great winning player. But for me to bet on them making the tournament, I think it really depends on how sold you are on Justin Porter. Kind of an empty stats guy for my money. They would be best to run as much as possible through Davidson, but that generally isn't how Clemson or Brownell have done things in the past. Davidson will function more in that chef role, I would say, of like, 16 to 20% usage when you really wish he was at like 24 to 25. And I've got a bad feeling Porter might shoot them out of some games because the shot selection can be quite problematic at times.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of his at this level, and it's really the guards are where I just get dicey. I mean, I think Chase Hunter was amazing, and Dylan Hunter is not his brother. He was efficient, but in a really small usage role. And I think a lot of people have seen his on-off numbers last year, and they're really good. But when I watched him, he's not actually doing that much on the floor. He's making 30% of his threes. He's not really generating a lot of like paint touches. He's not a super impactful defender. It was more like that he was playing and Chauncey Wiggins wasn't, or Jake Heidbreeder wasn't. And I think he's more competent than Heidbreeder, who didn't play any defense. Wiggins was arguably too big to be playing the 3. I think it kind of hamstrung them defensively a little bit. And they're going to try to do that same thing with Jake Wallin at the 3, the 6'10" guy that can shoot a little bit. I get the high-low with the bigs, like Davidson, Welling, Godfrey. I think they're going to really pound some teams in the paint with offensive rebounding, getting to the line a little bit. But I just don't know about the guards, if they've got creation off the bounce, if they've got enough shot making. And, I don't trust Justin Porter to hold up defensively, especially when they don't have like an awesome shot blocking back line. Maybe Welling is great there, but it's going to take a lot from Brownell, from Donlin, that staff there to hold up defensively with some of the new pieces that they brought in. So I have them 49th nationally. Again, a team that I'm like fringy tournament, but I see the scenario where it doesn't work.
And, this is kind of going to be the classic team. You're a betting guy. You feel like you're going to bet against this team the first 2.5 months. And then once everybody like over adjusts, you can bet on them the back half. Like once they're like, oh, we're in the ACC and it's okay.
Yeah. Give me
But
all
they're
the
probably,
Little John home spots where the crowd is
yeah.
hyped. That sounds good to me.
But the growing pains, I think, are going to be quite real to start.
Yep. And it is, generally a veteran team, older team. It's just not veteran together. And I think that, like you said, that does matter in that system.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, next up, that was also my number 7. So, Will, I'm gonna keep the mic in your hand. Who did you have number 8?
Marquette.
Wow, so did I.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Well, I feel bad because every Marquette fan in the Discord did predict this.
Yep.
But I think it's kind of obvious. I was genuinely surprised to see them inside the top 50. I wouldn't have them in a top 50, and it's no diss. I'm not really worried about the defense. I think that end's going to be fine. They'll figure it out. Shaka's a pretty good defensive coach overall. I know that they've had some wobbly numbers in the past, but that system forces so many turnovers, and with the right grouping, it can be pretty fine defensive rebounding wise. So I'm not really too upset over that. But who's scoring? Do you buy Chase Ross as the number 1 option? Do you buy Royce Parham? I think Shaka is quite excellent for obvious reasons. This is a really serious test of like Dabo style roster philosophy that you don't see anywhere else. I do hope it works out for them because I like zigging where others zag, but the roster itself just doesn't give me much confidence. I will say it benefits that they will play in a Big East with a serious power vacuum after number 2. So they could accumulate some wins if they figure things out. But I don't love the build here, and I just think, sort of like Clemson, this might be a gap year.
Yeah, and you look back to 2024 in the Big East when Seton Hall had 13 Big East wins and didn't make it. Like, you're going to have to beat the right teams. Like, if Marquette doesn't beat UConn or St. John's at all, maybe the wins, while there's a high number of them in the conference, don't look as good. And yeah, you need Sean Jones to be really sharp off the ACL tear. And I know he's been healthy for a while. I think he probably could have played a little bit at the end of last season. So he's had like a whole off season of full health. But yeah, you're leaning a lot on Ross, who's kind of up and down with his engagement on the offensive end. You have a nice spacer in Ben Gold, but that's not any easy points. You're really hoping Demarius Owens has a resurgent year. You're hoping maybe the incoming freshman contribute a little bit. And yeah, Parham is the big one that I think all Marquette fans are really banking on, him being a efficient-ish 13-point a game scorer, mismatch problem. I'm just not sure it's going to work. It feels a lot like his first team there in Marquette, at Marquette. They were outside the top 50. They did make the tournament, but that's not always a given when you're floating in that analytical range. And I know he hired Nevada Smith as the offensive coordinator since then, and they've had 3 top 35 offenses, but last year drifted to 35th, and that was with Cam Jones's individual brilliance. I don't see anybody recreating that this year. So yeah, a little concerned about the offense. Defense solid. They're going to force turnovers, but interior still a little soft, and they need a lot of player development. When you're doing it this way, you might have some up and down cycles within the development curves of your roster, and this feels like a little bit of a down year in that regard for them.
Yeah, and it's what it could add is, you look at this roster, there's not a single true senior on it. I believe. No, I guess Ben Gold and Chase Ross, but maybe they can get the extra year of eligibility. We never know anymore. I think eligibility might be fake at this point. We'll see. But you should return a lot of this talent next year. So I think a successful year for them, obviously it's making the tournament. But if you don't, if you're like top 60, 55, something like that, and you're like fine, and you get better as the year goes on, you can still build on that and be happy going into next season.
Yep. So I had them 44th in my top 50 ballot. They're just outside the top 50 per Bart Torvik at 53rd. Again, a super fringy team that, especially down the stretch, did not look good last year. I think they beat maybe one tournament team the last 2 months of the year, and it was Xavier, and it was not easy. So that didn't give a real encouraging trajectory. even with Cam Jones doing his thing for most of the year.
Let me get you the stat because I had this in mind. January 1st to the end of the season, 46th at Torvik.
Yeah, and that's if they're 46th next year, I don't think that would stun anybody for the full season. Even some of their fans, I think, would say that's probably well within the potential outcomes for them, and that's without.
Can you guess where Memphis was?
Boy, they were so bad against bad teams. I'll say 66th.
63rd. Can you guess their record?
17-3.
19-3.
Wow. Yeah.
And then one spot below them, UCF, 10-15.
That's the brutality of playing in the Big 12 versus the American, I guess. And yeah, the late game luck we mentioned right at the top of the show. Memphis had it in spades last year. Okay, so I believe we have shared almost all 9 of our teams. I had Utah State on
9.
there, and you had Oklahoma. I think those are our 2 differences so far. Hopefully we'll have a different number 10 and we can piss off 2 fan bases instead of 1. Where did you land for number 10, Will?
I had 2 choices here, both from the state of Texas, and I went with the one less proven, I guess. It is actual Texas.
No way. So did I.
Oh, Christ. Well, so this is the rare Sean Miller team where I feel way more confident in the defensive end. I think it could be really ugly on offense at times. I would challenge Texas fans who will respond because they love to argue online. Who is the lead creator in the backcourt? Who is the best shooter you got? Can either of your bigs get their own? Because I'm not sure the answer to any of those is very satisfying.
And whoever the answer for the first question is that also who you want it to be? If it's Tremont Mark,
yeah, like if it's Tremont Mark,
yeah.
If it's Tremont Mark, that's great for the 1 game a year where he scores 32, and that is terrible for the 3 games a year where he scores 4.
Yes.
So yeah, lock yourself in. So it's an interesting stat I uncovered. Miller hasn't had a team with a top 25 defense and an offense outside of the top 50 in 16 years. It was his final team at Xavier. And the only other time, that's the only time it's ever happened in his career. Usually the offense is either ahead or both units are like quite good. He's been like pretty balanced for the most part, but I just really hate the offensive build of this roster. The upside shot here is really built around Jordan Pope and Dalen Swain being capital G guys instead of lowercase g guys. And if you're into that, great. Hat tip to you. It's just not a mix for me. And this is another SEC deal where somebody's got to lose games. Somebody's not going to be happy with their close game luck. And like you mentioned off the top, we're averaging 4 coaching change reasons for at-large teams dropping per year. This, I think, would be my 4th on the list.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. I didn't love how Xavier looked last year. The year before, I know they got really shelled by front court injuries and thought they competed reasonably well, but I thought they were going to be just better all around last year. And there's some, sloppiness offensively, poor execution. I don't know if the players didn't get along quite as well as he hoped. But yeah, I think you're hoping for a big year from Vokietitis, like as your interior anchor, who's not like truly a shot blocker. You've got length on the wing, like they're pretty well set there, but it could be my turn, your turn offensively, a little bit of tug of war there. Are they going to play fast? Are they going to play slow? I'm not really sure what works best for this roster. So yeah, I'm with you on some skepticism. They're 36th at Bart Torvik. Where I voted them in our top 50 ballot, I'd have them in the tournament, but I think there's a downside where it just looks ugly. Some personalities clash. Year 1 coach with some retention, but also guys he brought with from Xavier that might not work. And I could see there being a downside with the Longhorns.
I think there's obviously a serious upgrade in coaching, both on court and pregame here. But the thing that is holding me back is this team last year had Jordan Pope, Tremont Mark, Trey Johnson, Kaluma, Shedrick, and was a first 4 scraper. Barely got in. And I'm like well aware Sean Miller is a far superior coach to Rodney Terry. I don't think that's going to require any debate. but nobody with a straight face would be able to tell me that this roster is superior to last year's. I think it's a severe, or not severe, but a serious decline.
How would you answer this? Do you think it is a better roster than last year's Xavier, which had Ryan Conwell, Zach Fremantle, Davin McKnight, the same Dalen Swain, Dante Maddox, Marcus Foster? This one probably has more depth, but I don't know. Like Conwell and Fremantle at the top of the roster is really good, and I don't know
I
if
think
this
that
roster
roster
has
is
it.
better.
Yeah,
And even then, like again, that roster just scraped in. They were now from New Year's Day on, they were top 35 by a hair, but still, that would have equated to like a 9 or a 10 seed. That's honestly for that roster not good enough.
yep,
So
yep. And if this roster's a little worse, and SEC is really good, and like you said, close game luck, or you don't get the right wins at the right times, it's going to be hard for enough teams to make it from the SEC. And that's why I think we're all a little skeptical, and we know there's not going to be 14, so some of them are going to fall out. Okay, you mentioned another category you were considering, some rosters where you don't love the build, and you could see being surprise misses. I've got just a mini list for that. I also have a category team that made it last year that's in Bart's top 20 that I think is most likely to miss. And then I also challenged us to come up with a team that was a 3 seed or better last year that we could see falling out. So I'll start you with the ones that you're just a little bit skeptical of and could see being surprise misses.
So I had these as honorable mentions I was too afraid to go for, which basically just comes out as they were like teams I considered for one reason or another, but ultimately couldn't come to committing myself to this team will miss. And this is just alphabetical order. Baylor, very high variance operation going on. Like this could honestly be a team that finishes anywhere from 15th to 60th in Ken Palm, and I would not be surprised. The roster is better on paper fit, but on paper talent, I got no clue. Michigan State, I really hate the offensive build of that roster, and it drives me nuts that they probably are going to spend a decent chunk of this year either A, praying that Cohen Carr finally figures out offense, which we'll see, or B, starting a lineup with Carr, Kohler, and Carson Cooper, which is a spacing disaster when paired with Fears at point. But it's Tom Izzo, and I just cannot bet against history when the history's that strong. And also, I think Trey Ford's going to bail him out some nights. Two others, Oregon. I'm not like crazy about their build, but I still think it'll be fine. I like the upside enough, and I like the top two there. A team with Nate Biddle, just I couldn't commit against that. I think he's too good of a player to let them fail. But again, I won't be shocked if this is another Oregon season where they kind of suck for 2 months and then they're in the Sweet 16. And then St. Mary's. Roster, not a huge fan of. Randy Bennett might be my favorite coach in the nation. So real tug and pull there. It's going to benefit them a lot that they're in the WCC and they can just kind of pile up wins. And of all the programs out there, they really do seem to have figured out Gonzaga. Their defense has held Gonzaga down better than anyone the last few years.
Yeah, they somehow, it's like every season Gonzaga's slowest games are against St. Mary's. Mm-hmm. They just force them into the mud, and that's where they can beat them, drag them into that level. I had two of those similarly written down. Baylor, I angered some Michigan State fans last week with my Big Ten coaching rankings, but they would be my pick for a team that was a top 3 seed that could miss it. Just if the offense is truly terrible. And I just don't think they have the depth to bludgeon teams the way they did last year. Like in the paint, they don't have the same degree of guys to just continually throw at you. And they don't have as many scoring options unless there's some really big time development from Kurtang, and the freshmen are both good. I'm not sold on that. It just feels like they could drift back down towards the 9 seed bubble territory that Izzo was for 4 years before that big resurgence last year. I also wanted to include it based on the SEC logic we had. Mississippi State. I love Chris Jans, but it's beyond Josh Hubbard. There's a lot of question marks there. I don't think Jaden Epps is an altogether winning player. Your mileage may vary with Jabari McGee and Amir Ali, and I don't love Brandon Walker. I just think Jans is good enough to elevate him with a big time shot blocker in Ballard anchoring the paint. But I'd be not stunned, and I'll cover my eyes. Can my alma mater be one of these teams? Are they going to fall out? Is Missouri going to do it?
I had them like on the periphery, but
Okay.
I couldn't quite get there. I do ultimately like the build enough to feel like they kind of feel like an 8 or a 9 seed
Yeah,
just the whole
that's.
year.
I don't have dreams of ascending and winning at Florida and having that kind of upside, but just get in, Tigers. Okay. Any other teams you want to mention? I know you said Michigan State was a team that you at least were lukewarm enough on. The category I had, a team in the top 20 at Bart Torvik that made it last year. North Carolina, like I'm excited about Vasar getting a bigger role. Kean Evans, Trimble could be a solid backcourt. I think Bogovac is a nice addition from overseas. But Hubert's been kind of up and down, man, and technically, I guess this is an up year on his trajectory. But I could see it not working out. I could see there being some really sour notes around the program if they start slowly, because I think had they not made it last year, or they not had a little bit of a surge late, he might have been gone already, and it could end up being a little bit lame ducky, and that would be bad for the overall mood and tenor around the team. So North Carolina was another one that I could see having volatility enough to fall.
I can see that one. Yeah, I guess they would be my pick out of any of these. Because like even looking at the back end here, like we like Arkansas enough. Kansas isn't going to miss it. I don't love their build, but I think they're actually a decent post hype candidate to me, where
Yep.
they could just be surprisingly fine in the year where everybody's trying to bury them. Yeah, there's always like one team, and I did just check this really quick. I know this isn't the Ken Palm preseason top 10, but last 3 years we've had at least one team in the preseason top 10 end up a 5 seed or lower by the end of the season. North Carolina from a few years ago is obviously included, but don't forget UConn last year ending up an 8 seed, or Gonzaga ending up an 8 seed, or honorable mention number 11 Baylor ending up at 9. This is going to hurt. Could I sell you on St. John's maybe being the disappointing team?
Yeah, I'll hear it. I mean, I certainly think Rick Pitino's too good a coach, but I also said maybe it was a Tom Izzo coach team that could do this. There are a lot of personalities and guys that want touches or are accustomed to touches. I could
What
see
the
it.
hell are they doing on offense?
Yeah. It's,
Like you're not seriously going to start Dylan Mitchell at the 3, are you?
yeah, or call
Right?
Bryce Hopkins the 3 because he can shoot a little better than Dylan Mitchell, which is marginal.
Yeah, so that's my case, is like it's a great collection of talent, don't get us wrong. It ranked like, very highly in everybody's transfer rankings this year, but as a fit, concerning, I will say.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, I like that one final bold call to send St. John's to the message boards and to the keyboards and have them coming after us. But yeah, that is it. That is the episode for this week. The premise of the teams most likely who made it in 2025 to miss the NCAA tournament in 2026. Shout at us in the Discord if we should have mentioned somebody else, or if we weren't fair to your team in our case. Happy to hear it and go back and forth with you. Thank you to Trilly for giving us the platform here at Basket Under Review for our Stats by Will and Jim podcast. Shout out to Home Field Apparel. Remember promo code Burner15 for 15% off. And thanks for listening. We'll catch you again next week with a premise to be named later.